Welcome, everybody, to day 2 of the Kinguin for Charity number 3 Spring Edition. I am That's Admirable. I'll be your host for today as well. And joined with me, just as yesterday, is the real dog himself, Mr. Monk. And yesterday, wow, I mean, we saw 4 of some really incredible matches yesterday. And actually, yesterday, the match, I think, of the entire day was Savits versus Tights, which, in my opinion, was one of the closest matches that we've ever seen. If you guys didn't see it, you'll have a chance to check it out when the VODs go up. But for now, you're going to have to go with day 2, where we have RDU, Kaldi, Strifecrow, Nyria, Lothar, 6-0, Firebat, and Show playing today, as well as the winner's bracket from yesterday will continue. We'll have 4 more players advancing through to their second round. And yesterday, we saw Amaz, Life Coach, Savits, and Kalento win their rounds over Alchemix, Tice, Frezar, and Kaldi. I'm sorry, over Masan, Alchemix, Tice, and Frezar, respectively. So, yeah, yesterday, matches. The Tice versus Savits was so close, and it was crazy. But other than that, what do you think the biggest standout point of yesterday's match was?
Yo, just to recap the Savits versus Tice match, I think that match really deserves a lot more focus just because of how high level it was, how close it was, how back and forth it was. And if I had to make like a top list of the best series of this year so far, that would probably be at my top right now. I don't think any other series can compare. There's been individual games previously, such as the Life Coach versus Hosty game, where Hosty got a Nas Dormu off of a Sneasel Shredder. That was one of the best games I've ever seen. But in terms of series, I think Tice versus Savits definitely at the top. Besides that series, I liked how Frezar kind of showed a bit of Shaman. Kalento showed a bit of Phase Hunter. Those are 2 classes I think that have been rising, but have been on the rise lately. Phase Hunter, 6-0 obviously plays it a lot, Chalky plays it a lot, and now we see Kalento playing it. So it's beginning to get a lot more popular these days. Shaman is also another class that most people have been rating fairly lowly on the class ladder. But some other people think, hey, this class is actually usable. It can counter stuff like Warrior, maybe counter stuff like Druid, just all around, maybe a solid class, and just something that people are thinking more and more about. When you build your lineups in the future tournaments, Shaman might actually be something you have to consider.
Yeah, I think Conquest is really accounts into that and changes a lot too, because something like Shaman typically was playable in tournaments because it was good against a wide range of classes. And now, frankly, I don't think it is that good against a wide range of classes right now. I think it's exceptionally good if you build it in certain ways that it can pick off basically kinds of classes that you're talking about. I think it can do a really good job dismantling Mage at times. I think it can do a good job dismantling Warrior at times. But it's not in the same position it was, say, like 6 to 8 months ago when Shaman was in so many people's lineups going forward, because they expected it to be able to put up a lot of safe kinds of numbers versus a wide range of classes. Like, it was kind of 50-50 with almost everything, just because its class cards were so strong, because everything was unrefined. And I kind of want to move backwards and touch a little bit on yesterday. I mentioned that Kalento wasn't someone who really played something like Face Warrior, and that his style was more of a
Face Hunter.
I'm sorry, yeah, Face Hunter, and was more of like a board control oriented kind of player. But when I went back and actually looked at his tournament history and the decks he played, Kalento is really someone who just is adapting to the meta and what he actually feels is just the best strategy. And while I think that his playstyle will tend to favor a lot of board trading, when he plays decks that don't have to focus on board trading, he really doesn't focus on board trading that much. And we saw that yesterday, and I was so surprised by it. But when you go back and really look at all of his tournament lineups and think about when he played certain class cards, like if you can remember everything that was kind of happening in the metagame, it really makes a lot of sense that he's playing it right now, because frankly, it is very strong. And we saw that at ESL. We saw that at this tournament. Even though he's basically the only player we've seen playing Face Hunter so far, it just was putting up a strong showing. It just looked like a good deck, and it's scary to play against. And those are the kinds of decks that are really the best ones. Not necessarily the ones that are winning the most, because usually if a deck is so good, people are going to target it, but it's the ones that feel like they put the most pressure on you.
Yeah, now that I guess Undertaker has been nerfed and Zoo is no longer a deck that most people play, the Undertaker Hunter is becoming pretty much extinct right now. Players are thinking, hey, I want to gear my decks more towards the control aspect, because Mech Mage is really the only aggro deck in the format right now. But then players like Kalento, Chalky, and Sixo, they come out and say, hey, no, Hunter is still alive. I can still play aggro Hunter, face Hunter. I don't have to play the mid-range Hunter. And it just brings two aggro decks to the table. And if you fill your lineup with two aggro decks, maybe the opponent's lineup won't be just well equipped to counter that.
That's I 100% agree with you, and I think that's pretty much what everyone's going for. I want to talk a little bit about our first match of the day, RDU versus Kaldi, and delve into the lineups a little bit. RDU's playing Hunter, Mage, and Rogue. I don't really think this is much of a surprise if you know much about RDU. He just likes to play strong classes. And Kaldi, I don't know a ton about Kaldi, and he's playing Druid, Mage, and Hunter. The only thing that really surprises me about RDU's lineup is that he's not playing Druid, and that he's basically played Druid in every single event he's ever played that I can remember, where Druid has almost always been in his lineup. Why is he not running it here?
You know, we have 16 players at this tournament, and actually I believe 12 of them are running Druid. So he's one of the select 25% that is not bringing Druid to the table. I guess just looking at his lineup, even though he doesn't have Druid, he still has the second, the third, and the fourth most popular classes in this tournament right now: Hunter, Mage, and Rogue. And I guess he's just feeling these three decks are very strong on their own, and I don't particularly need the Druid. In addition, I guess Druid may be a bit weak to some aggro decks that he might be expecting to face, such as the Hunter, such as the Mech Mage. So that might be another consideration when he was putting together the lineup.
And Kaldi, on the other hand, he is running Druid. Is he kind of just filling the more standard role? Because his lineup, Druid, Mage, Hunter, it looks like he... when I see a lineup like this, it really speaks to me that he wants to kind of be on the aggressor side of it. He wants to be the guy, again, applying a lot of mid-range pressure with something like Druid, where, frankly, its game plan is sort of, here it is, can you beat it? And in that same vein, Mage and Hunter are very much those similarly styled decks where they're the ones presenting a problem and seeing if their opponent can answer what's happening. His lineup is super in tune with that, and RDU is kind of, he's dancing around on both sides of it. He's got these decks that look like they can be extremely aggressive, and then Rogue, where Rogue is like, this is like a response deck. If it has strong responses to what's happening, Rogue ends up having a big advantage.
I think because RDU has not decided to bring Druid, and again, Druid is pretty weak to aggro decks. Meanwhile, Kaldi is bringing three of the most aggressive decks in Hearthstone. The combo Druid, probably the combo Druid, I have to assume. Probably the Mech Mage, and probably maybe a Face Hunter. Then RDU might have had a great decision there, not bringing Druid, not bringing a deck that might have been weak or at least even to all three of Kaldi's choices.
So do you think it's just because of the aggressive... There are so many aggressive matches available that people are targeting Druid as a result of that, because it's been such a predictable deck going into basically every tournament. Like it's very rare that you don't see like 75% of people playing Druid. So it's somewhere in their tournament lineup, and that's just been the case here, and he's kind of going one step ahead. Is that what you think?
Yeah, just thinking one step ahead, and I guess a few mind games are involved with everyone else in the tournament. Hey, everyone's expecting a lot of Druids. They're expecting to counter Druids with their lineup. Hey, why don't I just not bring Druid at all and just be one step ahead of the metagame?
I like it. Let's get some good thought process. So yeah, for those of you just joining us, this isn't just a tournament that we're running with a big prize pool with a bunch of pros invited. This is actually a charity event, and the benefit for this is for Child's Play. And Child's Play is an organization that helps provide toys and games for children in hospitals who don't otherwise have access to that sort of thing. So yesterday we raised over $700. I think we actually got to the $731 mark at the end of the day. And I want that number to be a lot bigger today. So if you guys want to make a contribution, you can do so. There are links below the stream that are available, and there's also links in chat that you can follow through to help be a part of this event and make someone's day brighter. Yeah. So if you want to learn more about Child's Play, you can also visit childsplaycharity.org.
Yeah, yesterday I set a goal of raising $500 for the day. But today we have a much longer day. Yesterday we had 4 matches. Today we're going to have 8 whole matches for today. So it's going to be a very long broadcast, and I think we can set the goal even higher. Right now we have about $796 raised. So why not shoot for something like $2,000? I think we can make it, Admirable.
I think it's a pretty easy goal to set. And if we don't shatter that record, I'd be very surprised. Again, if everyone in the chat donated a single dollar, which is like, less than the cost of a Coke, basically, you'd have thousands of dollars going by the end of the event, and that would just be something that's be absolutely phenomenal. I can't tell you how much it actually means to someone who's in a position where they would appreciate help and then to receive it. It's such an amazing thing that Child's Play is doing, and for children especially. I mean, those are the ones I think who need it most.
Yeah. I think we're still waiting on the players to get set up right now. We just want the players to be ready, playing at their best. So while we're waiting for them, let's talk a bit more about the players. And I have some pretty interesting things to say about them. RDU actually played in a Hearthstats a few days ago, and he played against Amaz. And I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Reddits lately, but they had a pretty interesting game where RDU played an Acolyte of Pain. Amaz forced him to overdraw like 3 or 4 cards. He burned his Gromish, and RDU was just like, oh, I'm in such a bad position. And the very next turn, RDU goes Shield Slam. But then he looked at his armor, and his armor was at 0. So he essentially used Shield Slam for a 1 mana spell that did nothing.
Yeah, it's funny. It was right when that happened, there was a tweet sent that was like, some of the best players in the world are playing fantastic Hearthstone. And I saw the tweet like right after he Shield Slammed for 0. I was like, no! Right after blunders. You know, players make mistakes like that from time to time. There's no way to avoid it. For anyone out there who follows chess, or anyone who doesn't, for that matter, Kasparov is like one of the greatest chess players of all time, if not the greatest of all time. He was I think it was a 15 consecutive year world champion or something. I'm pretty sure it was 85 through 2000 he was world champion. Like I want to say that that's the statistic on it. I know exactly because I don't follow chess too closely. Anyways, Kasparov's playing a blitz match, and he makes a move that actually quite literally just gives his queen away. This is like the greatest player of all time giving his queen away. Masters make mistakes. It just happens. That's the nature of being a human, is that you do have a rate of error that you go by. So to see someone like RDU Shield Slam for 0, it's like, oh gosh, it's so painful to watch. But that happens, and that's just something that you're going to see in competitive Hearthstone. It's like, albeit that's not the reason you watch tournaments, it certainly is one of the reasons you watch tournaments, is to kind of see these players go through these perilous times where they make a mistake like that and it costs them so much, especially at an important event.
Yeah, sometimes as a viewer, you try to live vicariously through the players, and you're like, hey, these players make these mistakes. Maybe if I make these mistakes, it's all right, because I can just be like the players too, right?
Yeah. So if you ever Shield Slam for 0 like me or RDU, you're not alone, I promise you.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we have Kaldi on the other side. Kaldi, definitely not as well known as RDU, but I believe he's actually been in the scene more for a longer time than RDU. He's one of the first players on the scene ever. In fact, he was on Team VVV, one of the very first Hearthstone teams back in the day. This was about over a year ago when Team VVV formed. Right now, he's on Fnatic. He's transferred on to maybe bigger and better things, but throughout his roots, he's been very consistently performing in a lot of minor tournaments. And it just goes to show you, if you keep performing well in minor tournaments, eventually you'll get noticed, picked up by a big team, and you can be competing on the big stage right here in the Kinguin for Charity tournament.
Yeah, I think he's one of those people that's actually kind of come through like a very, very long like grinding period where he wasn't getting a lot of fantastic results. He was just getting results. And I think something that was kind of not contributing to that is the fact that he wasn't like, very consistently streaming, and he wasn't like really big on social media and forums and those sorts of things. And he's definitely contributed to the community, but sort of like you said, he just was doing very consistently in minor tournaments until he's gotten to a point where now he's gotten noticed. And it just took him a long time of competing through this like grinder sort of mentality. And it's really not a surprise. And speaking of chess, I'm actually reading that he played chess for years in international tournaments, and that was basically where his gaming background is from. So it's not a surprise to see those kinds of skills translate into Hearthstone, where you have this turn-by-turn decision-making basis where you're having to take into account all of these different elements and figure out the kind of puzzle pieces going forward.
Yeah, and not only did he play chess, but he also played StarCraft for Team Infuse back in the day. I can't say that he was too well known of a player, but if you play StarCraft at a very high level, it tunes your mind as well. And maybe the APM also helps you when you're moving your mouse around in Hearthstone a bit, right?
I've seen Brian Kibler clicking around on the board, and he accidentally hits the end turn button just while he's thinking about stuff, which I have also done before, and is also a terrible feeling. So if you've ever accidentally hit end turn, like me or Brian Kibler, you're not alone on that. It seems to be a common denominator for this, is I'm making all these mistakes too. More matches that we have today, though. Strife Crow versus Nihilum is coming up after this one. It's going to be our second round of the day, and wow, what a player that Nihilum is going to have to go up against. And I have to say, I just kind of want to put this out there. Nihilum has been doing pretty consistently in tournaments when he plays them, but he doesn't actually have a win yet. And I don't think that that's a very good reflection of his skill level. and his ability to perform, because I actually think this guy's one of the better players in the world.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that's why I guess Team Liquid, or we picked him up, right? We do think that he is one of the best players in the world. And one of the reasons we picked him up is that we do think that eventually, and it's just a matter of time before he gets that huge win. When we look at his play, and even when Savitz and I are talking about his play, we're like, wow, this guy, like, he really understands what he's doing with a variety of decks. He plays so many decks, and he's just so good at learning them. He's so intuitive with everything. And it's, again, just a matter of time before he gets to the very top position.
Yeah, he's a really strong game sense. I spoke with him at DreamHack Winter, and there was one play, I forget what it was exactly, but there was like split decisions among pros. Like, people were like, no, you should have done this, and then half the other people were like, no, you should have done this other thing. And Nyria had a really good explanation. I really wish I could remember exactly what this was. It's so early in the morning right now. But he had like this great explanation for why that he was taking the stance he was taking. And even if it wasn't the correct play, he had such a strong reasoning for it that was what I was really admiring most about it, was that his thought process was very clear, and he had a game plan involved in this early game decision he wanted to make. So I mean, I agree with you. Also, if you just watch this guy stream, he does so well when he's playing, and like he'll make joke plays at times just to keep the game interesting and be beating people anyway. It's just it's really is kind of crazy how good this guy is and how little he's won despite that. But StrifeCrow, a guy who is also very easily one of the best players in the world and has no shortage of wins for anything. 3 major titles he holds: Pinnacle 2, the Kinguin for charity at Christmas, Seat Story Cup, the very first one that was held. And then he also has other wins. Like, he won a Tavern Takeover. He won the G2A Masters event. He won the InVen Invitational. This guy got top 4 at DreamHack. He top 8'd World Championships. He's top 8'd DreamHack Bucharest. He's top 8'd at IEM Shenzhen. Like, where is this guy going to stop top 8'ing and winning events?
Mm-hmm. You know, StrifeCrow, I was talking to him at BlizzCon, and he said, I asked him, hey, are you prepared? Are you very confident for this tournament? And his response was one of the most interesting I've ever heard. And the response was, yeah, I practiced really, really hard for this tournament. Whereas compared to other tournaments, like, I didn't even prepare at all. I was just bringing to tournaments what I played on ladder, and that was it. But after BlizzCon, we've seen he's just gotten so many good results lately. And I think it's because he's taking the game a lot more seriously. He's putting the dedication in, the same amount of dedication that he used at BlizzCon. And again, the results really show. He's won at least 2 or 3 tournaments since GVG came out.
Yeah, that's just the kind of player he is too. When you mentioned that too, that was around the same time that StrifeCrow and I started having a lot more communication with each other too. I actually didn't know that he lived in the Houston area before that. And then at WCA China was the first time that we had actually like kind of hung out and spoke with each other and talked about things. And Worlds was like a really big subject that was on his mind. Was like, he's like, yeah, I really want to win. I really want to get to BlizzCon, and I really want to win BlizzCon. It's like, I've never really wanted to really win a tournament before, but BlizzCon is the one I really want to win. And when I found out that his practice was just grinding a lot of ladder and paying close attention to how the matches were panning out and using his intuition, his feel through that, I was like, oh my gosh, like when you start practicing, you're just going to start actually beating everyone, and you're already basically beating everyone. And that's what we've seen. He put in a ton of practice for BlizzCon, and frankly, I think when he lost, he got a little bit unlucky to do so. It's just he had below average draws and didn't really have a lot of options available at his arsenal during that event. But since then, it's just been, he plays such strange decks at times, and you don't really see what's happening until you actually see it happen. And then you're like, oh, that's what StrifeCrow's doing. Like when he plays these grinder mage decks that he just loves to play, and he'll play against something like Handlock, and he like won't ping from the start of the game, and he won't attack them from the start of the game. And it's like, what's going on? Why aren't you killing this guy? And he's like, I don't want his Molten Giants to get active. I want to kill everything and then kill the Molten Giants on my terms. And seeing something like that is like a crazy amount of thought that went into a certain matchup and how you actually beat it.
Yeah, I think among all the pro players in the scene right now, StrifeCrow is the player that makes sometimes the most unintuitive plays. And we call them the StrifeCrow plays, actually, because you'd have, at DreamHack, for example, you'd have a bunch of pros sitting on the sidelines commenting on what StrifeCrow does, and no one can figure out why StrifeCrow did the play that he did. But then a few times later, you're like, oh, so that's why he did it. So just a very different play from StrifeCrow versus everyone else in the scene. And I guess that's why StrifeCrow is at the top. He just makes, and he can see all these different plays that are possible within Hearthstone that are not so obvious.
Yeah, I agree with you. Players looks like they're about to start getting ready to get into this game, and I got to say, it's looking to me like if you play Druid in a lineup like Kaldi is, that Druid is the deck you're going to lead with. And for RDU, I don't really know exactly where you go. If you're anticipating a Druid first, I imagine you don't really want to run Mage out there. And the Rogue versus Druid matchup is seemed to be like it's very lopsided one way or the other. Either the Rogue gets a big presence and has a strong tempo play with like Backstab and Eviscerate, or a Sap on like a Druid of the Claw that's in taunt mode to really buy himself a lot of time, or it just kind of falls behind and never really catches back up. And Hunter, I think, is just one of those decks that does fantastic against Druid with a combination of Hunter's Mark and Ironbeak Owls to really push through what's happening. The card that I think that poses the most threat to that, of course, is Sludge Belcher, though. So it's how Kaldi's deck is built is going to make a big difference too. Yesterday we saw some mid-range Druid decks played that had Sludge Belchers in them, and I'm liking that addition right now simply because of the aggression that other players are taking. So I'm curious to see exactly how that matchup pans out.
Yeah, not only the aggression, but Sludge Belcher, obviously a very good counter to the piloted Treaders that we've been seeing in pretty much every single deck that requires a 4-drop. Even Rogues, they obviously want to play their Value Teachers, but hey, they're like, hey, I want more 4-drops, so okay, let's put in some Pilot Treaders. Everyone else is doing it. Why not we copy them as well?
Pilot Treader is just one of those minions that gives you so much value. The average body you get is going to be a little bit stronger than a 2/2. And when you take that into account in comparison to something like Harvest Golem, you're paying 1 extra mana for a bigger second body and 2 extra power. And that's such a huge increase of stuff that's happening on one single card. And especially when it's such a small increase too. You're looking at from 3 mana to 4 mana, so there's 33% increase for a stat increase that is pretty significant, I would say. It gets 100% extra power on the front end and gets 100% extra average health on the back end. It's just, that's so much for 33% more mana.
And not only that, if you kill the first half of the Piloted Shredder, you still get a sticky minion in return, which means you can combo it with stuff like Flame Tongue, Savage Roar, with Tinker's Sharp Sword Oil. A lot of cards right now in the meta require a minion on the board for it to be activated. So just the stickiness of Piloted Shredder just is so good in the meta game right now to combo with those cards.
Now let me ask you this. A lot of people have been playing Piloted Shredder, and again, it's really no mystery. The card's just extremely strong. Sludge Belcher is obviously a great counter to it, but Sludge Belcher is also 5 mana. Is there anything directly that you can think of that trades efficiently with Piloted Shredder other than Sludge Belcher?
Well, there is the other card that's kind of similar to Sludge Belcher, and that card is Sen'jin Shieldmaster. But unfortunately, it does trade well with Piloted Shredder, but after the trade happens, you're basically left with something like a 3/1 taunt versus whatever the Piloted Shredder drops. So that might actually turn into more of an even matchup rather than one where the Sludge Belt or where the Sen'jin trades favorably.
Yeah, I'm curious to see that. I've been wondering why Sen'jin hasn't been showing up more in combination with Sludge Belcher, and I think the reason is that if you're going to play something like Sludge Belcher, it makes a lot of sense to also play Piloted Shredder alongside your Sludge Belcher, so that way you have something to contest their drops going forward, and then something to also contest their Piloted Shredder drops in the same turn that you would typically drop yours. So I can see why it's not there. And I think when I think about building decks, I'm like, do I want to play Sen'jin or do I want to play Piloted Shredder? And it just depends on which direction you're going to go. If you're going to take any sort of aggressive route, you want to play Piloted Shredder. Game 1 is about to get started between these two players. And Hunter versus Rogue is what it's going to be. I feel like this is going to be in slight favor of RDU.
I actually, because we can see that the Arcane Golem is in Kaldi's hand, we're going to definitely be seeing a Face Hunter. So I'm actually going to give the favor to Kaldi if RDU can't control the board very quickly. RDU typically he will have not too many heals, at the most 2 Earthen Ring Farseers, perhaps an anti-heal bot, but after that, Kaldi will be able to keep throwing in hero powers every single turn and probably throw stuff like charges or Wolf Riders and Arcane Golems every single turn as well. So RDU probably with the Rogue, no taunts and very limited heals. So RDU will definitely need to take control of the board early and then burst his opponent out, or he just won't be able to stop the aggression. At least that's my take on the matchup.
You know, it's funny that we talked about Sen'jin Shieldmaster kind of not making an appearance and Rogue really struggling with stuff like Piloted Shredder, and not only Piloted Shredder, but just aggression in general. This deck used to play Ascension Shieldmaster, like when it was the old style Miracle Rogue decks. Why did that card just completely fall out of favor?
It played the Ascension, but it wasn't like a 100%, oh, Miracle Rogue, I have to play the Ascension.
Right.
I think a lot of people, they fit in Gnomish Inventor in there, they fit in Violet Teacher in there as their one singular 4-drop, because no one ran double 4-drop in Miracle Rogues back then, I guess. So it was never really like definitive that you had to play Sludge Belcher at that spot, and there was just a lot of differing opinions from everyone else in the scene. So I guess it was never really standard, and there was never really an argument for or against the Violet Teacher or the Ascension Shieldmaster being played in Miracle Rogue.
Yep. I think it's a fair assessment. Wow, this is a really interesting... You know, last turn, RDU had a chance to use SI7 Agent on this Haunted Creeper and then Preparation of Fan of Knives, and he chose not to do it. And this turn, he's kind of got a similar decision. He can attack this Leok with SI7 Agent. He can use his Deadly Poison to take out this first iteration of Haunted Creeper, and then he can Preparation and Fan of Knives and clear this board out of the way and end up with a 3-1.
Yeah, there's actually multiple ways to clear this board. An alternative would be to clear off the Haunted Creeper with your SI and then Prep Fan and Eviscerate. But this is fine. I think probably better, actually. Oh, wait. He does neither of our plays.
Well, this is kind of the same thing. I mean, he ends up with a 3-1 body, and he's fanning it. It's just, you know, where he allocates his attacks are basically the same thing.
Yeah, this play is slightly better because it doesn't float 1 mana compared to the play I was suggesting. And it also develops a deadly poisoned weapon on the board so that you can Blade Flurry in the next turn if you choose to.
Yeah. I think with Piloted Shredder in his hand too, it's important to have not only the 3-1 body, but if this 3-1 body ends up dying, a way to actually contest a minion that happens. So say it's something almost exactly like this, like Knife Juggler and a minion, and say the minion actually is getting this one. So he's gonna have to Glaive Zuka instead, and it goes like this. But I actually think this is gonna be a spot where RDU is gonna choose to save his dagger as well. Like taking 4 damage in this spot is probably not best, especially not when you draw a second backstab.
Oh yeah, and this looks perfect for RDU right now. He drew exactly the cards he needed in the first few turns. He had the coin, he had SI Agent, he had double backstab, he had a prep, a fan, and eviscerate. Pretty much like the exact draws that you need to win this matchup. RDU's sitting at 24, now 22 HP against a turn 500. And actually, that's a really good position.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to beat a better one than this. Oh my gosh, Sassy Deckhand is actually a pretty excellent draw right now. If for no other reason, just because he gets added pressure on the board. And this also, not that I would expect Kaldi to be running a card like Freezing Trap here, but if he is running Freezing Trap, Sassy Deckhand is going to be one of those cards that performs extremely well against that. In RDU, I actually would like to see the attack on the dagger too. This basically is just turned into a race. So at this point, he just needs to get as much damage as he can. Now that he's dismantled what Kaldi has moving forward, it's basically is Kaldi's average damage that he draws going to be more than the amount of damage output that RDU can actually put forward.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Actually, both players are kind of in a top decking race right now. So just a lot of interesting plays right now that are possible. We can see Kaldi has run out of cards. RDU will be running out of cards very soon unless you draw something like an Azure Drake. So okay, there we go.
Just in case he draws something like Azure Drake. Explosive Trap going to get set off here. And curious what minion he gets off the Pilot Shredder. Gets Nerubian Egg. That's actually pretty good when he's got that backstab. He can just backstab his own Nerubian Egg here, which I would really like to see him do. And just get a second 4/4 body on the board.
Yeah, normally you can't activate the Nerubian Egg that well, but yeah, I guess backstabbing is fine. Also, if the Nerubian Egg is left on the field just as an egg, it could have potential to just be used as a Tinker Sharpsword target. We talked about sticky minions on the board, and Nerubian Egg is certainly one of the more sticky ones.
Yeah, so Kill Command gets drawn, and there's no beast to activate it. Unfortunately, it is a Worgen, not a beast. So if Kaldi wants to live another turn here, he's going to have to Kill Command and run his Worgen into one of these minions, which I imagine would be Azure Drake. And then after that, it is looking pretty grim. He's not going to have time to get the full charges out of this bow. He's got a lot of damage, but he doesn't have time to utilize it.
Eviscerate is lethal. Nope, Fan is not. And we're going to see what he draws from this Fan. Oh, Sharpsword, though. That's it.
Wow. Big draws from RDU. Great start. And an even better follow-up. So he's going to take his first game here. And we actually didn't touch on this for those of you who did not get to tune in yesterday, or those of you who forgot. This is actually Conquest format. And with Conquest format, players do not have to just win a best of 5 with one deck running over their opponents. They actually have to win 3 games with 3 different decks. So RDU, for instance, he has brought Rogue, he's brought Mage, and he's brought Hunter. He actually has to win a game with every single one of these. When you win a game with a deck, that deck becomes locked. When a losing player loses a game with a deck, the deck isn't locked, and he can choose any of his unlocked decks moving into the next game.
Yeah, so now RDU will have a choice between his Mage and his Hunter in the next matchup, where Kaldi is free to choose any of his 3 decks. So now it begins kind of a mind game. Which deck do you choose against the field of your opponent? And as we analyzed yesterday, Alchemist, Admirable, you suggested that you pick a deck that's really strong against the rest of the field right now. Can you explain why that's so?
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
You suggested yesterday that in this position, you want to pick a deck that's strong against your opponent's rest of the field.
Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah, this is a spot where this is one of the reasons I like Conquest so much, is because typically it benefited the player who won so much more in Last Hero Standing than it does in something like Conquest. Like, RDU's up a game right now. That's his advantage in this matchup. But now Kaldi can choose any of these 3 decks that he has to go against either the Mage or the Hunter of RDU. So if he picks one of his decks that has a good matchup versus his 2 remaining decks, he gets a favorable matchup. And that's sort of the idea behind this, is that there's a comeback mechanism involved, and it doesn't just require you winning the game. It actually comes from a standpoint of you being able to evaluate your opponent's lineup correctly and choose the right deck. Additionally to that, this is where the kind of the unexplored part of Conquest is the best way to build lineups when you consider that aspect and what that means moving forward.
Now, well, it's going to be a Mage versus Mage, but not a typical Mech Mage versus Mech Mage, I think, because we actually did see a counterspell in Kaldi's hand. Whether this is a Mech Mage with just one counterspell added in, or it's a completely different kind of Mage, we'll have to see. Yeah, counterspell is really interesting, though, because we haven't seen it in any Mage decks lately, so it might be just a card that throws your opponent off. These days, when your opponent's Mech Mage throws down a Flame Strike, so...
Yeah, I think this is, when I see Flame Strike and I've seen Counterspell, I think this is going to be a nod to more of a tempo-oriented Mage deck. That's looking to get really big swing turns out of what's happening. And that's not to say that he isn't a Mech Mage. He does draw Pilot Shredder, but so far a couple of his cards have been unconventional, like you said, when you compare them to something like Mech Mage. He has a Counterspell, he has a Flame Strike. Maybe this isn't just a cut and dry list that we're thinking about. In RDU, he's got a good start with some aggression here, and Sludge Belcher pretty much, this is like the alarm bells are going off now for the spectator point. This is going to be a deck that I imagine has something like Duplicates in it, and is really looking to just get a lot of value through the mid stages of the game, and use that value and use all the value that it's gotten to leverage basically trading with your opponents and kind of grinding them out of the game, while at the same time being able to have some kind of draws that can put a lot of pressure on your opponent and kind of blow them out.
Yeah, I've actually, I believe I've actually seen this list somewhere before. It's a list that has done really well on the EU ladder, getting both number 3 and number 4 EU legend at the same time, and it's just more of like a value mage. Just a lot of good minions on the in the deck, and yes, some duplicates, and I believe it even runs 1 Kirin Tor mage.
Yeah, Kirin Tor mage, it wouldn't surprise me to see that in here. It's just when you get Kirin Tor and you have a secret, it's such a huge tempo swing in your favor. So Mirror Entity going to get cracked here, and we did see that the other secret was Duplicate that he had underneath. So if this Snow Trigger bites the dust, he's going to have 2 copies of that.
Coin, I think, is going to be a really great play. He's going to test for a counterspell, which is one of the other secrets that you do need to test for in this type of quote-unquote value mage. If it's not counterspell, it's still alright, because you get to fit a ping in, and you get to give your opponent 2 Snow Chuggers, which isn't the best thing to give them, but it's certainly not the worst.
Yeah, so there's a Cairn, which is like really crazy to me that Cairn is being played in here over something like Piloted Sky Golem. Is that just truly a nod to how much value you want out of things? Like, Piloted Sky Golem provides more damage, but it doesn't provide, on average, quite as much health.
Yeah, it might just be a nod to how sticky the Cairn is over the Piloted Sky Golem. And I guess you want sticky minions on the field to get repetitive damage in. Also, it's not very much of an aggressive deck, this mage is, so I guess Cairn kind of makes sense here.
Yeah, so are you choosing not to trade with this Fairy Dragon? So if Kaldi wants to, he can kill off this Blast Mage, but it does kind of put a little bit of crimp on his mana. So curious to see how he's going to do this moving forward. I actually wouldn't mind to see a Sludge Belcher this turn and just see the Fairy Dragon trade straight up for the Snow Chugger.
Yeah,
a lot of options available though.
If you do that play, you're going to have to plan your next few turns as well, because if you play the Sludge Belcher, the 5/4 Goblin Blast Mage is probably going to trade into it, and then you're going to need to plan one ping on your next turn. So if you ping on your next turn when you have 6 mana, what are you going to do with the remaining mana?
Well,
and you do have options there. You have
yeah.
2 Snow Chuggers, you have the Frostbolt, so I think that is a valid play.
The thing he's concerned with when he does something like that, though, is he's got to think about how Fireball changes things, or maybe a couple of weird spare parts that can mix things up, or even how he has to proceed if he's fighting down something like a mirror entity that turns afterwards and kind of going for it. That's the other thing I really like about playing the Sludge Belcher now, is it's going to get in under mirror entity, so you don't have to worry about it too much going forward, and you have the Snow Chuggers to proc it afterwards. He's just going to favor a board clear, though, so responses are going to be Kaldi's choice for this game moving forward. I expect that style to be pretty consistent, where he will want to just be the responding player before he gets a lot of aggression. So this Cairn is going to help him respond basically on his terms by just providing a body that's very difficult for RDU to kill, but he picks up a second Fireball in a row, and with an Archmage Antonidas, 2 spare parts, and 2 Fireballs, this game feels like it's all but one at this point.
Yeah, I don't believe this deck runs any healing, maybe like 1 anti-heal bot, but besides that, you can see RDU just goes for face right now, and he's setting up lethal very well.
He's like, yeah, here you go. Take 7, take 5 more. Go. Let's see what you can do.
We also saw a look of extreme confusion from RDU when the Karen come down. He's like, why are you playing this card? Why not Piloted Sky Golem?
Yeah, I think he's really surprised by this list so far. And just, like, you saw when the duplicate got triggered, he kind of did like a, okay, duplicate. And so what I'm guessing is that he's relatively unfamiliar with a list like this, and that all his practice has been directed at matchups that he really expects to face, as opposed to like, a broad range of matchups that are available out there. I would just anticipate my opponents playing the best decks. And at times, that's where RDU's lineup is aimed to. Like we saw, he didn't bring Druid. It's because he expects people to bring Druid and expects people to target Druid. So when you have someone like Kaldi going against this, it's just a matter of, was him changing up his game plan worth it?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but as I said before, this deck seems to have gotten rank 3 and 4 Legend on EU. So Kaldi might have the confidence just from those results to play this deck. You see Fireball again straight to the face of
Spinning. Here we go. I imagine this mad scientist is running into the Sludge Belcher just to thin a secret out. He's actually going to go ahead and clear it. And when Rusty Horn's coming out here, it's just like, hey, I might as well. I mean, I don't want any shenanigans to happen. Finicky Cloak Field with Archmage is going to be more than enough next turn to seal this up. And I actually see that Kaldi doesn't have a way to heal. So this is going to be game 2, going over to RDU now, taking a quick 2-0 lead and going to have 3 games with Hunter to finish this match.
Interestingly enough, because Mirror Entity is on the field right now, if Kaldi played something like a Zombie Chow, he might have been able to survive one more turn, because the Mirror Entity would have Mirror Entity the Zombie Chow, and then he would have been able to heal for 5. So unfortunately, no Zombie Chow in the hand right now, and Kaldi, I guess, just shows all his remaining cards and hopes his opponent doesn't have a ping.
He's just gonna scoop it up this time. I think he's good, trying to complete that deal 100 damage to enemies and play 30 minions that cost 2 or less, or whatever that other one is, or whatever the meek one, the meek shall inherit.
Yeah,
I forget what that quest is called. Anyways,
the 40 gold one.
Yeah, he's just finishing out his quest. He's like, I haven't logged onto this EU account in a while. I've been playing on NA. So yeah, RDU 2-0 lead, and this is not a good position for Kaldi at this point. Hunter is one of those decks that it doesn't win every game, but it certainly doesn't lose every game. And when you have 3 games to win with it, it's just like, you have to feel like you're in such good shape. We did see Alchemix yesterday, though. He had a 2-0 lead and had 3 games to win with Warrior, and Life Coach swept him with his lineup afterwards.
Yeah, but again, RDU does have the Hunter left, and yesterday, Alchemist, he lost 0-3 with the Warrior, but Warrior is a deck that you can conceivably think that you can lose 0-3 with. Hunter is a more is just a more aggro deck, so it's very rare for Hunter to lose 3 games in a row, I feel.
And look at this Hunter list so far. What is going on? Abusive Sergeant Haunted Creeper, sure. Hunter's Mark, okay, he's teching that in. Ragnaros is in his hand. Piloted Shredder Savannah. What is going on? What is this list?
I think this list is one from, or at least one similar to the one 9man has used. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's the most popular player, or the popular Hunter player on EU. He plays Hunter almost exclusively. He's a Hunter specialist, and he gets rank 1 with it very often. He'll actually be attending the Gfinity tournament in England soon, so I guess we'll see him there.
That's good to note. I'm actually going to be at that event. And I need to know everything there is to know about him, Monk. All
right. I'll give you the inside scoop.
Give me those secrets. Be my mad scientist.
Speaking of secrets, two mad scientists on the field right now, so we'll certainly be seeing quite a few secrets.
Yeah, I want you to give me your secrets, but I don't want you to die. Okay, I want to put that one forth. Don't die to give me your secrets. I just want to have them. Be a Kirin Tor mage. There we go. Don't be mad scientist.
So you're saying that I'm not going to charge you for the secrets?
Correct.
All right. Also, speaking of secrets, Kazan Mystic is in this deck.
This is this matchup is already looking so crazy to me when you take a look at the sides of what's happening. Like, Kaldi's already playing an interesting deck, and RDU's playing Hunter, but I can say with full confidence, if I was playing against this Hunter list, I would not expect about half of these cards so far to be played.
Eaglehorn Bow, I guess that's a good draw.
Looks to me like he's going to drop the other Mad Scientist.
The issue with dropping a second Mad Scientist is that if you only run one type of secret in your deck, and your opponent kills off both Mad Scientists, you're not really getting full value off of either of the Scientists. The
reason I still like playing him is because of the way you're throwing off your opponent's mana. And like, he saw Water Elemental last game, so when he sees Water Elemental, I think he's got to kind of give a little bit of respect to that card being there, and wants to throw off his opponent's turn 4 so he can get a clean Piloted Shredder out. You know, Water Elemental is actually another one of those cards that really contests Piloted Shredder pretty well.
Oh yeah, we hadn't thought about that. The issue is like the freeze effect doesn't really affect the minion that drops out of the Pilot Shredder, so I guess it's somewhat like a double-edged sword.
Well, it doesn't necessarily just contest it directly, but it does contest it sort of like in a race scenario. Like Eaglehorn Bow is going to be a card that something like Hunter very often relies on, for instance, or Warrior, like when they play Piloted Shredder, something they want to get on the board as a Piloted Shredder and then use their weapons to kill everything else and supplement that with the Piloted Shredder. But if your opponent has Water Elemental on the board and they're freezing you, that just doesn't work out very well.
Oh, we get to see a very interesting turn now. I think right now you probably want to play the... It's all about whether you want to play the Sludge Belcher to contest the 4-3, or whether you predict an opposing Sludge Belcher or an opposing Loatheb come down the field on the Hunter's turn 5. If you think that might happen, then you play your own Loatheb. Following that, you have a turn 6 Kazan Mystic, which is pretty perfect.
Yeah, but this turn he doesn't need to be concerned about stealing the trap. I don't think he's going to think it's Snipe, and I would never think it's Snipe either. So looking at what's happening right now, I feel like Sludge Belcher is probably going to be his best play. Just kind of moving forward, fortify his board position, don't lose control of the board, and keep your tempo going. Because next turn, again, Frostbolt and Keys and Mystics to steal your opponent's secret and use Frostbolt to supplement your board position is going to be so much tempo that it's going to allow you to then scale into something like a Loatheb Mad Scientist turn into 2 Water Elementals moving forward. So he's actually just going to Keys and Mystic right away. And I'm really curious what that was. We need to get a glimpse of that trap to see exactly what's going on. And when RDU draws Freezing Trap, I'm going to think that it is Freezing Trap.
Yeah, if you suspect your opponent's trap is Freezing Trap, which is the most common trap in this particular deck, then what stealing that secret does is essentially it heals you for at least 4 mana, or for at least 4 health.
Stable Portal gets drawn. So Kaldi's secret that he took is indeed Freezing Trap. And he sees another trap on the other side of the board, so Frostbolting like Mad Scientist could be pretty decent here.
Whoa, unstable portal.
Yeah, it gets a Tide Caller.
Not a good one.
Yeah, not the one I think he's looking for. He's gonna choose to use Frostbolt on this Piloted Shredder. It's gonna get a one-eyed cheat.
I guess that's alright because you can just ping it, and I think you have to ping it right now.
Yeah, I definitely would. Wow, is he not gonna ping it?
That's interesting, I guess.
I'm really curious why he's choosing to use his life total as such a big resource right now. I feel like maybe it's just he feels like he's far enough ahead on cards that paying 4 extra life just really isn't that big of a deal. Because if you take a look at his hand, if he ends up getting to this point, he's going to end up winning. He has to make a 5-mana play next turn anyway. So just developing his Mad Scientist to make sure that he doesn't draw that extra secret in his deck. I don't think it's that bad of a play.
Yeah. Also, he has to consider that after all the cards that he's seen so far, he knows his opponent is running a Face Hunter, so he might be more likely to use his to use his life total as that resource that you were talking about.
Yeah. Actually doesn't take any extra damage this turn either. RDU chose to keep his Mad Scientist around and actually wipe out the Murloc Tidecaller. So it's not every day that you see a rogue or that you see a hunter with a rogue card in hand. But
yeah,
this is certainly one of those scenarios. That just looks awkward.
Oh yeah. A black rogue card in the hunter's hand. Yeah. Definitely not what you see every day, right?
Well, they're going to get him down. Make sure there's no shenanigans going on. And if I am correct, yeah, RDU didn't get a trap from last turn either. So 2 freezings is all he's going to be running. Houndmaster. This could be a little bit of a problem, though. That's 10 damage that Kaldi just took. And now he's got an 8/7 taunted Savannah Highmane to deal with. No polymorph, no silence, nothing.
Yeah, we're really going to need to see that polymorph right now from Kaldi's deck. And he probably runs it right after all these like value cards. Polymorph is another one of those. It's not exactly value, but if you're running this sort of deck, the value mage with the water elementals and the sludge belchers, you have to think that polymorph is probably going to be an include there, right?
I would assume so. Maybe as a one of though. Like running 2 polymorphs is a bit heavy.
Wow, okay, there we go. Killing off as much of the board as possible and freezing the Savannah Highmane. Yeah, I don't think he can take another 8 damage. Just recursive 8 damage to the face every single turn is probably not what you want to see. Stampeding Kodo is not bad, but nothing on the board can be Stampeding Kodo right now. And I think at this point, Hunter can go for the aggression.
Yeah, I like Unleash the Hounds here and just put pressure to the face. Again, you have an 8/4 taunt to sit behind. Might as well just load the board up and go for it.
I think this is one of the strengths of Hunter in that even though you're playing more of a mid-range style, you always have the potential to go for face. You can always turn it on whenever you determine it's necessary or when it's correct. It's kind of similar to Druid in that respect. Druid is another mid-range deck, but it always has the Force of Nature combo to just go for face when you can turn the gears around.
Sorcerer's Apprentice gets picked up, and this is actually sort of an interesting draw now because Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mirror Entity, and Sludge Belcher all become available this turn. The problem with this, again, is that he's facing down the Savannah Highmane and doesn't really have an efficient answer to it.
Yeah, does he actually attack into it this turn? That's going to give him more hounds or more.
Yeah, I think I would have liked to see an attack and not a ping.
Yeah, now just Kaldi's just a few kill commands away from dying, or maybe even a Glaive Zuka.
Yeah, where this goes is actually pretty important. I don't think he wants to buff his Knife Juggler at this point.
Yeah, this is a pretty clean buff. Right now, he can sacrifice both his hounds in, even play the Stampeding Kodo and go for face.
That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, there's no heals from Kaldi that we've seen, so I think this might just be game over.
Yep, down to 2, and Kaldi's going to need something big to get out of this. I don't even know like what would be beneficial here. Already you saw he thought about attacking the Sorcerer's Apprentice, but putting your opponent at 2 I think is just, it's worth so much right now. And Kaldi has no way to defend itself, actually. He can't even like kill his own Pilot Shredder and get like a taunt or anything weird like that. So that's going to end up being it. Artie's going to sweep this series 3 games to 0. Kaldi going to fall short. Unfortunately, this mage deck just not really performing up to par. I think these are really the matchups he was not looking for. I feel like these players, like this is the one step ahead that RDU went, where Kaldi was aiming at these Druid decks and these Mech Mage decks. The Mech Mage deck just didn't go in his favor, and RDU actually just doesn't even have a Druid in his lineup. So I feel like the way that he built his lineup just ended up dodging everything Kaldi was trying to do, and I think that's where you saw a big edge.
Yeah, RDU thinking that one step ahead, and it definitely paid off for him. Kaldi, he gave a smile there at the end of the games, but he knew he had lost it. Unfortunately, Kaldi, this isn't Kaldi's tournament to win, but RDU is certainly very happy as he hasn't been doing that well lately, and it's certainly nice to get one win on the board right now.
Yeah, I think he definitely did a good job, but it's just tough to be what it is. And RDU, I mean, talk about a guy who's 2014 had a fantastic year, but like you said, lately he's just been struggling a little bit, and so it's got to be a sigh of relief to get a win on the board. I'm in a Skype chat with RDU, and he mentioned that during that tournament where he shield slammed for 0, right after that happened, he put in the chat, he's like, I'm so tired, I can barely even look at the screen and keep my eyes open. I just want this match to be over. Sort of the way it's been. He's been putting a lot of practice to Hearthstone, and his results have not been reflecting that. But like you said, good to get a win on the board here. So before we go to a break, I just want to remind everyone out there this is a charity event. The benefit is for Child's Play. Child's Play is an organization that helps provide toys and games to children in hospitals who don't otherwise have access to them. If you'd like to learn more about Child's Play, you can visit childsplaycharity.org. And if you'd like to make your contribution to it, we have our goal. Monk set our goal today, a challenge to you guys to get to $2,000 by the end of this day. We have 8 rounds. We just saw our first one. We have 7 more coming up after this. So if you want to make a donation, you can do so via links in the chat or via links below the stream. When we come back, we're going to have our second match of the day, Strife Crow versus Nyria. Guys, don't go anywhere.